Have you ever processed your own black and white film? It's easy to do. Let's find out how to do it at home. My name is Rob Skeoch. I'm a career photographer and I've been shooting professionally for over 45 years, and I've been shooting film for over 50 years. Maybe some of these techniques that I've learned as a photographer shooting for Major League Baseball and the NFL, getting published by magazines like Sports Illustrated and even National Geographic, maybe some of these tips will be useful to you as you want to learn about film photography. Before we start to process, we're going to have to mix up some chemistry. Here's a few tips on how I do it. Now, I'm just getting set up. I just want to show a couple of things and where they fit in. First thing, hey, no food around chemistry. So you're trying to mix chemistry. You're not trying to ingest chemistry. So get rid of the coffee. It's a sad part of the day is, hey, you know all those COVID masks that you still have that you're not using anymore? If you're going to mix chemistry, it's not a bad idea to throw one of these on. I'm not going to do it for the demo, but I definitely would consider this. Now, in my darkroom where I normally do this, I have an exhaust system. So maybe that's a little different. But in your kitchen, why not just throw the mask on? Now, one thing you're going to need is your wife's drill. So my wife used to build houses, so I can borrow her drill. This is a DeWalt. It doesn't have to be a DeWalt. It appears that any drill will work. You buy a $3 or $4 paint mixer. Now, they don't last forever. They last about 30 years, so you know your mileage may vary, but you get a paint mixer in the drill. This is how we're going to mix the chemistry. We're not shaking it. We're not doing it with a spoon. We're using the drill to mix the chemistry. That's the first tip of the day. Get one of these. They last a long time. They're inexpensive. Your wife probably has a drill you can borrow anyways. Now, the developer I'm using today is Kodak X-Tol. I bought a case of it years ago, and this is my last package. So it's a part A, part B scenario, and you're going to mix these two up. And it's going to make 5 liters of chemistry. And then when you use it, you mix it again 1 to 1. So this makes 5 liters, which is exactly how much fits in this old Ilford container that came with Print Developer originally. Anyways, we're going to mix this up. You need hot water and the chemistry and the drill. So this is tap hot water. The hotter the water, the easier it is to mix. But you don't need boiling hot water, just tap hot water. And I'm going to add my first package. You want to get this totally dissolved before you add the second package. Even though I don't have 5 liters of water in here, it'll dissolve. So that's part A in there. It's mixed in well. And now I'm going to mix in part B, which will clear up the color. So this is Kodak X-Tol. It's a great developer. I'm just switching back to Ilford ID11. The X-Tol has become hard to find, actually. Anyways, you might be able to get it anywhere. So it's a good developer. This gives us 5 liters of X-Tol basic solution, not final solution, because you can mix it different ratios. Now here's the trick. Here's one of the secrets. So what I do is I let it sit for 3 or 4 days or a week or maybe longer, and it makes the whole thing more consistent. If I use this later today or tomorrow, my negatives would be a little bit too contrasty, and then I would think, oh, I need to reduce my development time. But when I did some more film in a week or 2 weeks or a month, that development time wouldn't be accurate. So I like to let it sit for 2 days, 3 days, a week to kind of take the bite out of it, and then the whole jug will be much more consistent. So I'm mixing this up, realizing that I'm not processing film today. I'm going to process film in a few days. I'm going to let this sit. Sometimes I leave the lid off it. So I guess it's oxidizing a bit. Anyways, it just takes the bite out of it, which makes it more consistent through the time that I'm going to use this. I guess if you use the whole thing on the same day, it wouldn't matter as much. But you know, this is going to last me a month or so. So I want the first batch and the last batch to be consistent. So let's dive right in.
The reason that you want to process your own film, there's a few good reasons. First off, it's probably cheaper, especially once you've got like the little tank and the reel and you've got a little bit of chemistry in that. It's probably cheaper, but the real reason is you have total control. So if you shoot film and you realize, oh, I need a little more contrast, you can add time to the development. If you're too contrasty, you can take a bit of the time off. And it's easy to process. People feel that it's difficult. People are afraid to try it, but it's a very simple process. Now, the only time you actually need a darkroom is when you load the reel. So the reel is loaded with the film in the dark and put in this light-proof can. And after that, you can do everything with the lights on. And as I said, it's much simpler than people think. It's like grade 9, grade 10 chemistry. It would be, you know, more than adequate. If you can bake a cake from a mix, you can do this. So there's three products that we're involved with here. There's a fourth one we use at the end. So this is the developer. I'm using X-Tol and I've mixed it 1:1. Now this little can holds 300 milliliters and I fill it right to the top. I don't just fill it adequate to cover the reel. I fill it right to the top. And that's because I don't want any bubbles to form. So I fill it right to the top, 300 milliliters, and it's at 20 degrees. Now, you're gonna take a thermometer and you're gonna measure the temperature. And you wanna be 20 degrees or 68 Fahrenheit. You don't want to be around there. I think the more critical and exact, this is the only really exact temperature that you need. And that's 20 degrees, 68 Fahrenheit. If the temperature was higher, the chemistry would act faster and you would probably over-process. And reversely, if the chemistry was cooler, it might not develop enough. So you want to be bang on. That's one of the things with photography. It has to be something, right? So why not make it exactly 20 degrees? You could, if it's a little bit warm, I use tap water right out of the tap before I've run a lot of water. Our house is like 70 degrees, so it comes in at like 70 degrees. I put an ice cube in it for half a minute, or maybe I put it in the fridge for 2 or 3 minutes. Now, when I set all this up, including loading the reel, and this wasn't a full film, it was like a half roll that I had processed the other half a while back. Anyways, to roll the reel, mix the chemistry, I put the coffee on before I started and I was done and ready to go before the coffee was ready. So it's a very simple process. This is Ilford's HP5 film. And what we're gonna do, our time is critical, and according to the giant development chart, it's gonna be 10 minutes, 45 seconds. So I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna gently pour it in here. I hold this on a bit of an angle just so no bubbles form and that it can kind of flow in. And as I said, it's 300 milliliters. It's Kodak X-Tol mixed 1:1. There we go. So there's a little drop left there, that's fine. Press the lid on. Now agitation, 1, 2, 3, 4. 5. And I'm just going to pound it once or twice. That just releases any bubbles that might have kind of captured on the reel. And the new agitation idea is that you do it 4 inversions every minute. And so we're just going to let this sit. Now, as I said, it's exactly 20 degrees. So again, at the 10-minute mark, we're doing 4 inversions. 2, 3, 4, a tap, we let it sit. We used to do every 30 seconds, and now they're saying, why don't you just do it every minute? It will be agitated enough, and maybe it'll hold the grain a little bit smaller, which is always a great thing. The next chemical is Ilford's stop bath. This is called indicator stop bath, and that's because it's yellow. When it's exhausted, it becomes blue. And I think that's more for printing. So if you mixed up the same amount in each tray when you're printing indicator stop bath, developer fixer, when the stop bath goes purple, all the chemicals are exhausted. So it's not really pertinent here to have indicator stop bath. Any stop bath will do. Ilford makes it, Kodak makes it, I'm sure other chemical brands make it as well. So that's the stop bath. First, we're with the developer, again, X-Tol 1:1, and I mix the X-Tol 2, 3, 4. I mixed the Xtol maybe 4 or 5 days ago. I don't like to mix it and use it right away, as I talked about when I made up the Xtol developer. So we're using this stop bath. Now you don't actually have to use stop bath. You could just use water at 68 degrees, 20 Celsius. So I'm using the stop bath, and you don't have to. You could use water, and some people just use, and this would be a drop, and this is only a drop of stop bath as well. Some people use white vinegar because really it's an acid, and the acid, as you remember from chemistry class, will stop the process of a base. So I assume that this is a base, and now we stop that activity with stop bath with it, which is an acid. Again, you could just use water, and I'm not really showing you the proper way to do it because I probably don't do it the proper way. I just do it this way, slight modifications over the last 45, 50 years. But basically the process hasn't changed too much. This is not necessarily the right way. This is just how I do it. We're going to let that run down. Now, the length of time that you're going to process, you're going to get that information from the massive development chart. And on that chart, you can plug in any film, any developer, the ratio of the developer, the ISO that you shot the film, things like that, and it's going to give you the perfect time to start with. This is a starting point. That's the thing to remember. This is a starting point, and you're going to want to use your own experience after you've processed it to modify that. So if you look at your nags afterwards and you think, you know, they're a little bit flat, they're a little bit under processed, well, then you would just give a little more time. If you look at them, you think, wow, the whites are blocked up, it's way over processed, you know, it's super thick, then you could cut some of that time back. But I think for a starting point, this giant development chart will get you in the ballpark for sure. So what I'm going to do when the development is done, I'm going to pour the chemicals back in the cylinder, go to the next chemical. Now, you have to find out where you live what you can do with that chemistry. You might have to drop it off at some place where they ask people to take chemicals. You might be able to put it down the drain. It will depend on your situation. If you live on a septic system, I probably would not pour it down the drain, but you're going to have to find out what the regulations are where you live. Anyways, you're going to save the chemistry. Now the developer I wouldn't use twice. Like I've mixed up 300 milliliters, that's how much it takes. And I'm going to call that like a one-shot developer. So some people would maybe use it twice. I don't use the developer twice. I'm super kind of critical on the temperature and the freshness of the developer, so that my processing is consistent from the first roll of developer that I use, and then I've used 5 liters of developer, and the last roll is very consistent. It's about consistency, and you don't have to be technical. None of this is technical. This is very easy chemistry to mix up, and it's very easy to use. So people say, well, I'm more artist, I'm less technical. You're technical enough to figure this out. 68 degrees, 3 chemicals, you could get away with 2 plus the one that we're going to use after the wash. Now, as I said, you can do this anywhere where you can load the film in the dark. So you could even load the film, like let's say you don't have a darkroom and your washroom has a window, so you're kind of limited to what room you can make totally dark. I've been in hotels where they were too bright during the day, but if once the sun goes down, then you can kind of block the window or block any light coming in from under the door, then it'll be fine. It's got to be pitch black, but there's generally a way, a closet, a bathroom somewhere that you could just load the film. You're not doing all this there, you're just loading the film. And the other thing to remember is maybe take your watch off. I use a Fitbit as well. I take that off because that might light up. I take the phone, leave it outside the darkroom. I mean, probably no one's going to call me, but if they do, it's going to light up. If they send me a text, it's going to light up. So I just leave that out. Literally, it takes 2 or 3 minutes to roll the reel. And now this was only a half film, but you kind of get the idea. Now it's a bit of a change for me. As I said, we always used to process and agitate every half minute, and now we're doing it every minute. It's almost harder because you lose your concentration for a second. And I would normally be, not normally, I would always be doing this in my darkroom, and I'm down there like a monk. I don't want to be disturbed. I don't want to kind of mess up, and sometimes you've got multiple batches going, multiple tanks, different times. Every film seems to be a different time, and sometimes the same film, say HP5 as an example, but I'm not sure it's true in this case, but maybe HP5, the 120 and the 35 mil are different times. So sometimes you can stack them and do them together, and sometimes the times are different. Generally, the films are different times for every type of film. And you generally can't do them together. Now, sometimes people, for some films, I think T-Max is one of them, they do a pre-rinse. So they do all these same chemicals, but before they put the developer in, they put water in at 68 degrees, and that kind of pre-rinses and gets the film soaked, get these emulsion wet. They say there's an advantage to that, and it also, on that film, there's a backing that washes off, and so that generally washes off with the wash water, the pre-rinse water. If you don't do that, then you just get all that chemical, that wash off in your developer, which you're throwing away anyway, so it probably doesn't matter. But I know that a lot of people pre-wash their film just to get it, absorbing and wet. So anyways, we're going to just pour the developer back in here. Now this is the stop bath. Again, you want to be as close to 68 degrees as you can. If you have these huge temperature jumps between the chemicals, you can get what's called reticulation, which is, it's just the temperature change is affecting the grain, and it's making the grain clump together. So you do want to kind of avoid that. But this is, these are all around the same temperature. But this is critical. Well, the developer, it's critical. Stop bath, you could be a couple of degrees warmer. The fixer, you could be a couple of degrees warmer. Not really an issue. And again, with the stop bath, I'm going to agitate it. Well, I'm only going to leave it in there for a minute anyways. But with the stop bath, we're no longer controlling the contrast. So all of the development and contrast of the picture was done with the developer. The stop bath is just stopping that process. That's why you could use just a wash, just normal water to stop it. But the stop bath probably is the proper way if I was doing it the proper way. I'm just doing it how I did it. So about 45 seconds, a minute in there. Again, you can see it's still yellow. When it's exhausted, it will be blue. And then, again, that's probably unlikely to happen with developing film, but it could certainly be happening with printing. Now this is Ilford's fixer, so we'll get this started. And this is just stopping. We've developed the silver, we've stopped it, and now we just have to make it permanent. So the fixer is going to make that permanent so that you can now reveal it to light. And there we go, 300 milliliters of that. So with the fixer, temperature not as critical, but you do want to be around 20 degrees. Time not as critical, but you're going to need 6, 7, 8, 10 minutes. I usually do around 9 or 10 minutes in the fixer. And if it has to go a little longer, that's fine. You can just let it sit there. The thing to remember with processing at home is just that it's easy. The toughest thing, honestly, is getting the film on the reel. Then you've got it on the reel, you put it in the can. Now you can turn all the lights on. Now you can, bring it into a regular room. I'm here in my studio. So now it's not a complicated process. It's definitely something you can do at home. The fixer comes as a liquid. You can get powder as well. The stop bath comes as a liquid. The developer comes as a liquid or powder. I use the powder, it's much cheaper. And it's easy, I'm mixing up pre-made powder developer. So I mix that up. But there are people who want a certain chemical, so they're buying loose chemicals and they're making their own developer, and they find joy in that. So they're measuring the different chemicals out as powders, they're measuring them with a scale, they're mixing them together as powders, and then they're mixing them. And they might argue, well, this if you add a little more of this chemical, it makes the grain smaller, or it increases the contrast, or it does this or that. So that's probably not beginner level. I'm happy after all these years to just use a powder developer that I mix at home. I don't need to make my own developers, but people do, and they get great joy out of that. So this rabbit hole of developing at home can go anywhere. And I know if you're processing sheet film, you might have a couple of sheets that you're doing at a certain length of time, and then you think, well, there were some other shots that I did, and I've kept them separate, that the scene, the contrast was higher or lower. And you can modify, just for those couple of sheets, you could change the development time to control that contrast. And that's certainly with sheet photography. You can do them as a batch, but you can easily do them one at a time and really fine-tune the processing time for each sheet. Now we're just about done here with the fixer, and as I said, around 10 minutes. Maybe your fixer will be a little bit less. Once we're done fixing, we're going in the wash. Now, most people would be not processing at their desk. They would be processing in the bathroom or the kitchen. And so you could certainly wash the film in the kitchen or the bathroom. I would take it out of the tank and I would put it in just a pot and have the water at around 68 degrees, just pouring gently and not at a very high rate, just to kind of rinse this off. So you're gonna rinse for 45 minutes, maybe an hour, and just so you don't need a huge flow. And every once in a while, I would just kind of come over and pick it out and put it back in. That would release any bubbles that might be on it and make sure that you're getting fresh water on the film, because you do want it to wash. So again, you don't need high volume, but you do need kind of that steady flow of water. Now in my darkroom, I have what's called a hurricane washer, which is, oh, here we go, it's time. So that's the end of the fixer, and we're into the wash. So we're just about finished with the wash. There's one chemical left to go. It's either Kodak Photo Flow or Ilford's wetting agent. And all that does, there's a crack in the bottle. All I need is a couple drops of that, and that just helps the negative to dry without any watermarks or streaks on it. So that's key. That's the final kind of chemical, and I don't rinse that off. And then to hang it up, I can either use the Ansel Adams certified clothes peg. This is exactly like every other clothes peg except certified and 10 times the price. Or what's better yet is these little alligator clamps, and because they've got a little more grip to them, I use 2 at the bottom and 1 at the top. I put a string across, I hang it from the string, and then with 2 at the bottom just to give it a little weight so it dries straighter. We're done with the wash. We're in the photo flow, about half a minute in there, and then you're just going to squeegee off the film. Now this was just a half roll. So we've got our film. Again, I said this was a short strip that just wanted to process. Maybe put a clothespin on the one side, and then we're going to hang it up on a string. Then once it's on the string drying, we're going to kind of like turn the lights off, leave the room, and just let everything dry on its own. We don't need any additional dust. So there you have it. We've processed our roll of film at home. Again, you'd probably do it in the bathroom, maybe you do it in the kitchen. Probably you don't have a darkroom. That's why I did it here right at my desk. It's easy to do, and the advantage of doing it at home is, well, you can do it whenever you want. It's cheaper. I'll get to that in a sec. But you have control of the contrast, and you can try different developers. If you take it to the lab, they're going to have their standard chemistry that they use, and they're not going to use a different chemical that you might want to try. And they're also going to charge you probably 100% if you have to push the film or pull the film or modify the time, because they've got a process and now you're taking them outside of the realm. They might have to do it by hand. So doing it at home, simple, easy. It's something that I would encourage you to do. give it a try. Now maybe there's a better starting chemical for you. So I use the Xtol. It makes 5 liters. You mix it 1 to 1, so now you have 10 liters of working solution. I'm going to switch to ID11, but that's kind of the same. I think you can get a 1 liter package as well. But anyways, it makes a lot of chemistry. You might be better off to buy these little Ilford satchels, and it comes in a very little package that you mix up to develop 1 or 2 rolls of film. I think it's 2 35 mil or 1 120. So you don't have this chemistry, you don't have to buy as much chemistry, you don't have the chemistry around the house already mixed up, just kind of oxidizing and getting old. So that might be a solution, these Ilford satchels, one-time satchels, so it gives you enough chemistry to do, I think, 2 rolls, and then it's discarded. And then when you go to do another 2 rolls, maybe that's not tomorrow, maybe that's 2 months from now, then you're going to mix up a fresh batch, and you always have a fresh batch of chemistry that way. So that's worth considering for sure. So it's fun to do, easy to do. The only thing you need a real darkroom for is to load the film on the reels, put it in the can. Now you're using your developer, you're agitating 4 inversions every minute, you're right on 20 degrees, 68 Fahrenheit, and then maybe you're going to use a stop bath, maybe just a wash or rinse at the first time. It's not really going to matter. Then you're going to fix it. Now you're going to wash it, let it wash for 45 minutes or so, and then we're going to use the photo flow or the washing agent to kind of keep it from streaking, and hang it up to dry in a dust-free place. You've got some perfect negatives.